Another podcast I absolutely loved recording, and welcome to it. Natasha is a yoga teacher and mindfulness teacher, community and youth worker, and it was such an informative, uplifting podcast. She talked about lots of different things, including what is mindfulness, what does that actually mean, and how do we find ways to incorporate mindfulness and anchoring moments throughout the day rather than maybe creating a space for a long time session, which can be really beneficial for us, but at the same time can add some rigidity and make us maybe feel like it needs to be something that's prepared in advance and requires lots of time and energy and cost. Whereas, how can we incorporate those things in the micro moments too, in the transitions between things in our life, or just in the moments of free time that we have? We also talked about Natasha's new book, exploring mindfulness through a beautiful story for young people, for children, and the yoga nidra that's woven in there. And we talked a wee bit about our own personal experience with yoga nidra. What is yoga nidra, and how is it such an amazing practice, and how it really shifts our state of kind of restorative, our experience of restorative rest, and how we can lean into being supported by other people through that process, and lots of things in between. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode, and thank you so much again to Natasha for such a wonderful episode. A wee bit about your journey and where you are today. We talked a wee bit about that just there, but do you want to share a wee introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Natasha and I'm a mixture of all different, I wear a lot of different hats. So I'm a yoga and mindfulness teacher and soon to be children's picture book author, as well as my background is in youth and community works. I've done that since around 2009, like started volunteering in 2009, and then paid work all through youth and community work. Um, so I work with all ages for both yoga, mindfulness, and my day job. It's all combination from young kids from 5 all the way up to parents and carers, and
Mm.
yeah, big mixture of different things. I'm also on a board of trustees in Edinburgh as well, so that's quite good seeing the other side of the voluntary sector slash within an organisation, not doing the day to day, but seeing it from a kind of holistic, higher up approach to the behind the scenes kind of
Yeah, yeah.
organisations.
Such an interesting wealth of experience that you bring. It really is.
Yeah,
I wonder if we can
a
kind
big
of
mix.
connect with your mindfulness and meditation and yoga teacher training. When did you begin to notice that that was something that you wanted to do? I read a wee bit on your blog and kind of the gaps and role models that you felt and experienced, maybe still do, but of teachers. And what was your kind of
Yeah,
entry point to that experience?
when it was in 2019, yeah, 2019, went on a holiday that was a mixture between a holiday and a yoga retreat. So it was in Morocco, and it was like a not a holiday camp, but it was kind of like a they had a mixture of different surfing and yoga. They had yoga 2 yoga classes a day, like morning and evening, and some in the afternoon. And I'd been thinking of doing a yoga teacher training before going away, but I was a bit unsure. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could actually teach yoga. I was like, I enjoy doing it, but I'm not sure if I'd be able to like share it with other people. But then when I was on the yoga retreat, I was chatting to the mainly one teacher, but sometimes it'd be another teacher. I was like, so do you like teach yoga all the time? She's like, yeah, like she's based at the hotel holiday place.
Mhm.
Um, and then I was saying, oh, I thought about being a yoga teacher, and so she was kind of like not inspiration, but it was kind of like in my head. I was like, oh, I want to try and do that at some point. And because and just being away from day to day life, I think we were there for maybe a week or 10 days. It was.
Mhm.
Um, so it's just nice to have to notice the benefits of yoga just in a relaxed environment, not having like to go to work, have to go to yoga, or like being at work and then going to yoga. It was nice just to have that time just to like slow down and connect to like my thoughts and just relax. And then it was after that that I done two two yoga teacher trainings that were for restorative yoga and yin yoga. So they were my favourite kind of styles for relaxing and
Mm.
slowing down. My work, my life in general is quite busy, so those ones are nice to be a slower pace. Before and then following year, within 200 hours. So that's Ashtanga Vinyasa. Um, so had yeah, a combination of different yoga teacher training, but
Yeah.
yin is my expertise and one that I teach the most.
Oh, that's so
Enjoy
exciting. I have
teaching.
a very
Yeah,
big calling to yin yoga, and it was such a beautiful thing for me to discover in a time in my life where everything was so busy, and I was doing yoga that was like Ashtanga and Vinyasa and
yeah,
all it. And then I was like, wow, yoga doesn't need to just be that thing. It can be a slower, restorative experience too. And
yeah,
I connect with so much of what you shared, and it's so interesting that your yoga teacher training almost mirrors all the roles that you have in life. You've been able to see
yeah,
it from all the different perspectives. And you said something really powerful there that you didn't know if you wanted to become a teacher and share that thing that you had for your personal experience. And
yeah,
I think so many people experience that, especially in the kind of creative world, that they enjoy the creativity for their own personal mental health or their own
yeah,
connection. And then I guess we're kind of taught that in school that find your thing and then pursue it as a career. But maybe not all the time we need to pursue the thing that we really enjoy as a career too. And it's a really
yeah.
powerful question to ask yourself if that's the right thing. Because did your relationship with teaching change your personal relationship with yoga? Did you find that that shifted your relationship?
Um, I think my practice deepened, well, especially during the yoga teacher training because you're doing it so much like regularly. You learn about the theory and things. But I think it helped me see both sides to being from practice and teaching. So I started teaching before doing my 200 hours during lockdown. I was teaching online classes, yin classes to family and friends. So I
Mm.
was doing that for quite a while. And then that's when I was like, oh, I really like, because even teaching it made me feel relaxed as well at the same time. Although I was leading the class, I was like, oh, this is actually something that I want to do more of and learn more about. Um, yeah, so it kind of deepens my practice and understanding about
Yeah.
how it can impact different, just from hearing from different people how they felt after it and the impacts of it. This is something that a lot of people need, especially
Yeah.
when life's so busy that a lot of people don't have that space just to slow down, just be with themselves really,
Yeah.
even for like an hour or a short amount of time.
Right. What a beautiful
Yeah,
thing though that you were able to relax as you were teaching. That's something
yeah,
maybe sometimes quite challenging for people because they're in the zone of trying to teach the postures or whatever is going on in the class, but you were able to relax with the process.
yeah,
Lovely. That's so lovely. I can sense that from even the way you're talking about it. I'm feeling more relaxed. And you also mentioned, I know that this isn't the questions that I share with you, but I just have one wee question on it that you mentioned
hmm
going away and being out of your normal routine and then that allowing you to recognize that maybe it's something you want to pursue. And I always think
hmm
that about therapy, that I wish we had periods in our life where we're like, oh, I'm just taking a year out of everything to heal, to kind of do
yeah,
some internal stuff. I wish that that was a normalized thing that financially would be a thing that we could all do. I just feel like it's really difficult sometimes, like you said, about people's lives being so busy. It's really
hmm
difficult to carry the peace or the healing with us out with the kind of yoga space. And I know that that's always what we're kind of working towards trying to integrate. But
yeah,
sometimes we don't have the headspace, like you described, of going away and then going, oh, what do I actually want to do? And where is my creativity taking me? Or I just think that's such
yeah,
a gift that we can sometimes try and give ourselves if we can. And there's so many
yeah,
barriers to that. And I've experienced that throughout my life that I've not really had time not to be mentally well. And sometimes it just comes across and you can't ignore it. But we always feel like there's not the right time to be not okay. But I wish I
yeah,
didn't feel that pressure to always be at a certain standard. Society kind of forces us into that, especially full-time work. It kind of
Hmm.
creates this pace that we can't kind of check out from because it's always
Yeah,
doing things from us. And I just think it was really beautiful the way that you described having that space allowed you to see that that's what you wanted to pursue.
yeah. I've kind of noticed that even with being, i I'm on maternity leave, and it's probably it's a lot. Like I'm taking, well, I've got a year off. So although it is space, it's a different role. So now looking after someone else, but there is space within that it's like not a career break, but it is similar. It's like a gap in time where I'm not going to work every day and I'm
Yeah,
not thinking about work all the time. Whereas before, on maternity leave, I wouldn't think about work all the time, but it would be in my head like I'm going to work tomorrow or what have I got to do. But I've not got that. I've kind of got more like less. Not. I'm trying to think what the word is. Clear, like more clear. Like mine's not as busy. Like
yeah,
thinks about things, but it's not as busy with other like 'cause a lot of things is working with other people's worrying about other people's things. So their things would then become I'd be then thinking that what are they doing or how are they doing or
yeah,
what are they going to be like next time I see them? But I've had a kind of gap from that, which has
yeah.
been quite nice.
Nice. And I think that this jumps us a wee bit ahead, but I wonder if that did that give you the space and time to work on your book? Was that a stop, or were you previously working on it? And was there any space in maternity leave to kind of come up with that idea?
It was on maternity leave that it came into mind, but initially I had thought it was during, I think it was either 2020 or 2021, was doing my yoga Nidra teacher training, and
Mhm.
that was mainly for adults, but it did have a module for kids. And at that time, I could make a kids book that was full of yoga nidra meditation. But I never got round to writing the meditations, or I wrote one meditation, and that's a free meditation on my website. But I didn't make a collection of them. And then it was the children's book idea was when I was on maternity leave. That originally it just started off as me having a story just come into my mind one night, and I just wrote it down on a Google Doc. And then after I'd written the whole story, it's like, oh, what am I going to do with the story now? But I didn't. I like doodling and things like that, but I'm not like an artist. So I was like, can't just have this as a PDF. I'd like some images to go with it, and I'll look into seeing if I can get it turned into a physical book. Um, so it's linked to mindfulness for children, mainly mindfulness of the senses, and it links with inclusion and diversity. The characters are there's two main characters, and one of the characters has autism, that has ADHD. So it's not explicit in the book, but based on their personality traits. Um, so that I've got a lot of experience working with kids with autism and ADHD, um, and just from general life as well, known people. So and I realised that within children's books, you don't really see or hear many characters having like being neurodiverse or even disabilities, or it's not something that I've came across very often. Same with the diversity across like Black and Asian children in books. There's not as, or they may be in books, but they're not main characters, or the book's not themed around them. So
Yeah,
in my head, I was, oh, that would be good to have to contribute to, especially in Scotland as well, because I know there's a lot of, I think in America, there's probably a lot more books that are more diverse and inclusive, probably not enough, but I think particularly in Scotland, even Black authors in Scotland, I'm not sure how many there are, but
yeah.
I don't think there's as many as there. It would be nice to have more.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there that you've not explicitly labeled the characters with their neurodivergence. Is that something that's important to you to just have it as normal place? It's in it, that's the way that they show up and that's their life experience without actually saying this is specifically for.
Yeah, yeah. yeah, it's just so it's not like a label. I know that some that people do want to be like have a diagnosis, and it does help having the diagnosis and thing.
Yeah.
And I thought that having the it not explicit in the book when children are reading it or parents and teachers is help with just showing that everyone's different, and some people children might relate to knowing someone who's got a similar personality or themselves, and then yeah, just making it kind of acceptance and kindness with others' differences
Mhm.
without making them feel like they're othered or they're
Yes.
yeah that
Yeah.
they're included.
It just
Yeah,
is that we're all included and we're all here. And there is that kind of balance or the shift happening with representation that sometimes people feel it's kind of similarly when we're talking about community work, parachuted into places. And it's like it's it's unnatural and pushed and forced rather than this is a natural diversity of us as humans. But in a sense,
yeah,
it's like if it's not pushed, then maybe it's not going to be there in some ways too. And it's finding out and navigating that balance. Did you find growing up that you didn't feel, because you mentioned that on your blog too, that you hadn't had teachers that you felt like you could see your experience in yoga? Did you feel the same
yeah,
with writing, like maybe books that you can remember being wee and not seeing.
yeah. I can't think of any. I think a lot of books were like this, Kip and Chipper, like when they were a lot younger. But other like even really chapter books or other picture books, I don't remember them being very diverse. I remember seeing like picture books, and a lot of them were white children, or if there maybe a book and it was like animals or whatever. But I never really, there's not a book that comes to mind that I can think of or really like that book, and I could see myself in that book.
Yeah.
And there's not any that I could think of. And similar to the for the yoga teaching, that's part of the reason why I was into mind about doing it, because I've not actually I'd been to, well, not been to, but practiced online with yoga teachers mainly in America that were black, but then in the UK, well, in Edinburgh, I used to go to a Pilates class, and the teacher was black, but there hadn't been any yoga classes I'd been to, or even just not the teachers, even just within the class, like the students in the class. It was I was mainly the only person from a ethnic minority in the classes. So it's like, oh, if I do my yoga teacher training, will people come to my classes, or like, will I have other yoga teacher pals, or not pals, but other people who you get on with? Kind of, there's a lot of unknowns when you're starting something new. It's going into a whole new sphere of work,
Yeah.
and so that was in the back of my mind as well.
Yeah, that sense of belonging and connection and understanding of that you would just be able to resonate in some ways that maybe wasn't there for you. And that then creates all
Yeah,
this kind of self-doubt that wouldn't be there if you had, yeah, just a representation and familiarity.
yeah,
That's so difficult. And have you
yeah.
found that taking that step into teacher training, that some of those fears have dissipated? Are you feeling like a part of the yoga community now and as a teacher?
Yeah, yeah, don't I? Yeah, yeah. It's nice to know other people who are even just moving into the freelance, yeah, sphere, knowing what other people do, and yeah, mixing with other teachers, and
Yeah.
yeah, feel like I'm part of the community. Although I don't teach regular classes at the moment, I was teaching in the studios in regular classes each week, so that was nice to see a mixture of different students coming
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
And I wonder, just to kind of come back to your book, it sounds wonderful. And when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I don't know if I've shared that with you, but I have done yoga teacher training, and
Oh,
Yoga Nidra was something that I just couldn't believe existed, and I was so excited about it. I had a personal experience of it where I just felt transported into another world. It was
yeah.
actually, do you know Stephanie Wall, who teaches in Glasgow? She teaches,
No.
you might be really, she's an amazing yoga teacher, and she has a yoga space called Cali Collective. I remember doing a kind of New Year. This was maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. I did like a New Year workshop, and it was like literally on the bells. It was so
Oh
cool.
wow.
It was like a sharing circle, and then a dance situation where we were all kind of closing our eyes and dancing on our yoga mat, and she was playing the drums. It was
That
such a
sounds so
healing
cool.
experience. And then through that, I did like some yoga nidra, and I just remember it just being really transformative. The whole like taking yourself on a journey, and also
Hmm.
it changes so many things subtly, like feeling safe with following someone's voice, and I just felt like it was really, really powerful. But I also know that not many people know what it is, and so I wondered,
Yeah, I
can you
think
share a
people
wee bit
think it's
about it?
yeah. So I mean, the teach either Yin Yoga on its own or Yin Yoga and Yoga Nidra. And I think
Yeah,
because Yoga Nidra has the word yoga in it, a lot of people think it's a physical practice like the yoga postures and asana, whereas it actually translates to yogic sleep. So it's meditation practice, which isn't the only posture is Shavasana, which is lying down on your back, all wrapped up in blankets and cozy. And then usually it's around 20 minutes would be the minimum length of yoga nidra classes. Minor then scripts or the sessions are usually about 30 to 35 minutes off yoga nidra. So it's a practice. It moves your awareness to different layers of your consciousness almost. So it starts with it's awareness of your breath, and then awareness of your body, and then when it's kind of interoceptions, you're then becoming aware of your breathing and then counting numbers, and it includes visualization and there's long periods of silence or short periods of silence so that you're in a liminal state. So it can feel like sometimes people fall asleep during it. That it's the state where you're as if you're falling asleep. That you're in that kind of hazy. I think it's alpha or not alpha. I can't remember what the brain is. It's one of the brain. It's the brain waves just before you fall asleep that
yeah,
you're in. Yeah. So it is a really relaxing practice. I remember the first time that I practiced it, and this is amazing. And I do practice it not so much during the day, although it is good to practice it. Some people do it in the morning, so that it's refreshing. Although it's relaxing, it's also refreshing, so it helps you feel more awake almost, and yeah, awake and relaxed. Some people say that yoga half an hour of yoga nidra is equivalent to three around 3 hours of sleep.
yeah,
So although you're not in a sleep, it's like has lots of benefits for your mental, physical, your whole body basically. It releases, although you're lying down relaxed, it can release physical tension in your body as well. So it's a very relaxing meditative practice.
yeah. And it's so beautiful to hear you describe that, especially when we're talking about how busy people are and maybe not giving themselves time. I've really felt like yoga nidra is that space where you can practice all the things of mindfulness and meditation, but you're supported by other people. You're maybe in the room as
Yeah,
well as someone taking you through that. And so you're maybe not having to have that I'm going to carve out the space by myself, which can sometimes be a wee bit challenging for some people.
yeah, yeah. Even if they're not speaking to each other, then because your eyes are closed and you're going to draw compared to a physical posture yoga
Yeah.
class. Yeah, even online, it feels like a sense of community and connections. Everyone's resting at the same time in a similar space,
Yeah.
led by the same person. I think it can be quite a powerful, even if it's a short session. I think short can almost be better than none at all. Like some people think, oh, I need to have like an hour and a half or 2 hours every week, but that can be a bit harder to do than having 20 minutes every day or shorter bursts
Yeah.
of rest.
Yeah. Have you found that I don't know if I kind of added this in the questions I was going to ask you, but maybe I did. Yeah, because I've just got them here, so I was going to reflect on that. That in the Yoga Nidra kind of yin yoga realm, if you found that anyone has found that challenging, that sometimes people reach towards more physical asana practices for kind of the culture that we exist in of that fast pace, gotta get something in really quickly that feels like it's having an instant effect. Have you found that
Yeah,
that's challenging for some people?
yeah, I've noticed it mainly in like in-person classes, not through people staying, but through like observing, because during yin postures you hold them for between 3 and 5 minutes usually. So it's quite a long time to be holding the one position. And usually you can move during the postures, but only if you're in pain or
Yeah.
at risk of injuring yourself. But sometimes I've noticed with people, they're maybe like fidgeting or moving about, or it's almost like there's not many there's not many spaces or time in people's life where you're just being still. Even if you're just sitting down, then people would probably be like on your phone or doing something else while you're sitting there. So with yin, I have noticed it can be quite challenging just to basically be with your own thoughts while holding a posture. The postures do, when you first go in them, they might feel a bit uncomfortable because you're getting used to being in the posture, but over the few minutes, your body does relax and your mind starts to slow down once it goes to that meditative
Yeah.
state of mindfulness of being in the moment throughout the class. And even people who maybe are a bit fidgety or find it challenging, I've usually noticed from the beginning to then even the middle of the class and at the end of the class, they're more relaxed and they're
Mm.
not moving about as much. And at the end, everyone always says how relaxed they feel, or they're going to have a good night's sleep, or they're
Yeah.
always relaxed by the end of it, which is nice.
Yeah. That's lovely. And what has been your own personal journey through all of this? Have you felt shifts and changes as you've, yeah, continued to practice?
Yeah, I think I've noticed from when I first started, I found it easy to be not easy, but I found it easier to be physically still during yin yoga compared to my mind
Hmm.
being still. So I could be in the posture for ages, but my mind would be thinking about lots of different things. It would be very busy. So I've noticed that over the time of me practicing of, and having a mindfulness practice out with the physical yoga practice, they both connect to each other. So my mind isn't as busy and I can a lot be a bit, my mind's quicker to relax rather than it taking a lot longer.
Mm.
I don't practice yin at the moment like I don't have it kind of scheduled in. I just do it sometimes at random random moments throughout the day, or just do one posture and do that for a few minutes on each side, or 5 minutes, and even just doing one posture makes a difference. You can,
Yeah.
yeah, I can feel the release almost instantly after the posture if I've been short on time.
Which is such a lovely thing that you sometimes we see that we have to go to a yoga studio and do all the things, but actually we can integrate it into wee moments in our day. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's such a relief. I think I got into that cycle of having a practice and I would have to do it from beginning to end. And
yeah,
that rigidity then sometimes means I maybe don't have time for it, or I'm doing it and not getting the benefits because I'm feeling like I'm squeezing it in and it's not actually giving me that sense of groundedness, or it's just
yeah,
another thing to do. Whereas if you have like one or two things, like a certain posture that makes your body feel really good, and that might look different, I guess, to anyone. But there might
yeah,
be you go to a class and you're like, that feels so good in my body. I try and like incorporate one or two things that like a headstand, for example. I've done a headstand
hmm,
probably every day for maybe about like 11 years, like just
oh,
because
wow.
it's like something that, but it's like one posture that feels really good in your body, and that somehow just feels really, I don't know, like it's a wee bit empowering.
Hmm.
and a nice reminder of like being really in your body. And everyone
Yeah,
will have a different posture that makes them feel like that. But it's lovely to hear you say, like, even if you've got like a couple of minutes, you can, in the
yeah,
transitions to doing one thing to the other, you can maybe find that space.
yeah.
Yeah. I am going to have a wee look at the other questions I had for you. I know that you had notes too, so you're more than welcome to have a wee look at them. And so, yeah, I had here, which I guess is a nice transition. How do you feel these things that we've explored impact our different aspects of our life?
I think it impacts your relationships, or relationship with yourself, because the more you practice, the more you learn to be with yourself and not like if you were in an in-person class, you wouldn't be comparing yourself. Like maybe in the beginning, your mindset would be on my posture, it's the same posture, but it looks different to that person. It'd be kind of a lot of inner critic thoughts popping up. And even within mindfulness, I know that sometimes people just through discussions, they're like, oh, I can't do mindfulness because my mind's too busy. But everyone's minds are busy. That's just how everyone's minds are. But once you begin to realize that's just part of the practice, it's obviously you're accepting of yourself and your internal world. And I think it also helps with your relationships with other people, whether it's at work or friends, family, just anyone's different. But especially through mindfulness, I think through learning to pause a lot for mindfulness. So if you were in a like at work and having like a busy day or a stressful day, just having moments of everyday mindfulness. If you needed just to take a couple of deep breaths and just take a few moments at your desk or just pop into another room just to feel a few moments of calm before doing something else or before maybe reacting. I think sometimes it can be quite a good way to, what's the word, be like aware of other awareness of yourself and other people so that you're not instantly replying to someone. You take a moment to think like what, like to just to pause before speaking or to mind listening to people during maybe like work meetings or just general. 'Cause I know that sometimes I've been practicing doing it quite a lot since doing the different yoga and meditation and mindfulness training. That some before doing that, I would sometimes, if I was having a conversation, I'd be thinking of what I was going to reply back. So if say you were speaking, and my mind would be like, oh, what am I going to say? Once Jen finishes talking, I'm going to like, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
But through practicing mindfulness and fully listening before even thinking about what I'm going to say, I'll just wait until I've taken everything in. So I think that can help people because then you're not you're fully being present and you're
Yeah.
not worrying about the future about what you're going to say.
Right.
So I think it has an impact quite a lot just across all
Yeah.
aspects in different ways and for parents as well, just being I think kids, even working with kids or just being around kids, that you notice can see them being in the moment a lot more. Not that they do worry about things and things as well, but you see pockets of them just fully immersing themselves into something and it's like they're in their own wee world, not thinking about not worrying about things and yeah, just being in the moment. So I think yeah, it can be nice to see like they're a good reminder of
It's a lovely
how good
reminder.
it can be just to
Yeah.
not worry about things as much and that you can't change what's happened before and you can't you can take actions towards the future but you don't know what's going to happen so you can only live each present moment. You don't know what's going to happen next in life.
Yeah. And it sounds like mindfulness is almost like is a practice that's continual throughout our life, right? That we're always
Yeah,
top it up and tune in with it. And you described that so beautifully that actually it makes us less self-conscious. And I imagine
yeah,
that then our connections with other people are more fulfilling in some ways because we're fully with them rather than, yeah,
Hmm.
worried about and judging ourselves and questioning what we're going to say and maybe mishearing them or not fully like
Yeah,
absorbing what they're saying because we're so in our own mind worrying about what's going on. And so actually a
yeah,
side effect is being less maybe harsh on yourself as well as
yeah.
conscious and so if you found different ways to kind of anchor into mindfulness, and how would you define that mindfulness? Because we hear that so much, and I wonder if we all have a different interpretation of it, and maybe you'll have the teaching to go behind that.
Um, yeah, I know what you mean. There are different, because there are kind of overarching definitions, but then yeah, it's different for each person. I'd say it's a kind of tool or technique that you use to bring your mind back into the moment. So fully bringing your attention to whatever you're doing. So if you were washing the dishes, the mindfulness practice would be your attention and focus would be on the washing up liquid and washing the dishes. So it's kind of like bringing your focus onto each thing in the moment. So it could be informal mindfulness, like washing dishes, or if you're doing a formal practice, like this, and noticing your breathing or noticing your senses.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and whenever your mind does start thinking about something else, or maybe something that you're going to do next, like, oh, I need to do that next, or whatever it's something that's happened. The mindfulness practice is bringing, noticing those thoughts that are going around in the background, but not dwelling on them, and just bringing your attention back into whatever it is that you're using as your anchor to focus on.
Yeah. Those are the words I was thinking of. It's so interesting. And to your question, you kind of answer the next question that I was thinking, really thinking about senses and how anchoring our senses are. And sometimes I've found for me that different times in the day or different things that I'm exploring in myself, different senses will be, I don't know, like will help me ground more, if that makes
Yeah,
sense, depending on what's been on for me that day or but I found that sound is a really anchoring sense. And so it might show up differently for different people, right? That
yeah,
each
yeah,
sense might be, yeah, you might connect more with depending on the time or the day. But you mentioned that senses is a part of your book, right? That grounding through senses, is that woven
yeah,
into your scripts, your Yoga Nidra stories?
yeah. So the book's mainly like mindfulness. So it's a character who's like she's a human character, but she's a butterfly. She's called Amaya. The book's called Down Amaya. So she's basically very busy flying about being a butterfly, and she makes a friend in the book, and then through them meeting, she learns how to slow down by tuning into her senses. So she uses different senses to be in the moment, and so it's teaching kids that they can practice mindfulness no matter where they are, and that you can always find moments to pause, even if you don't do all your senses. That even if you're just having a bit of chocolate or you're eating, you can focus on the taste, or if you're out and about on a walk, things that you can see and shapes. And there's activity, including activity sheets at the back of the book as well. So Maya, she takes the reader through a mindfulness activity, but there's also like the activity sheets at the back so kids can practice it
Right.
whenever they want, or teachers can photocopy the
Mm.
sheets and
Oh, that sounds
introduce
great.
mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll help the parents or the adults who are involved in that process with them feel more connected
Yeah.
to the kids, but also themselves at the same time.
Yeah.
How you found that slowing down growing up, was that a kind of part of your awareness in who you grew up with, or do you feel like that wasn't talked about much? I don't know if we grew up
Um.
kind of close by, but maybe our experiences are different in that slowing down.
Yeah.
I grew up just me and my mum, just to give you a wee background of my experience. I grew up just me and
Mhm.
my mum, she had to kind of, with our circumstances, take on a lot of different roles.
Hmm.
So the idea of slowing down in her day probably there wasn't chances to. She might, if she was
No.
introduced, like if she was introduced to your characters and like the thoughts around, like just that sense that that's what we do, and that was maybe brought into her life in different ways, then she might have had that chance. You had
Yeah.
introduced to those ideas from a young age.
Me and my well, I've got two sisters, but at the time it was just me and the middle sibling. There's a year and a half between us.
Yeah.
So she had asthma as a kid, and the my mum had found a yoga class that had been advised that yoga can help with your breathing and things. So she started going to yoga classes, and because we were so close in age, I was allowed to go in class as well. So we went to weekly kids yoga classes. And I don't remember, well, I remember getting sheets of paper that had like different yoga practices and things. But my mum always says, "Oh, you used to come home and for like your homework, you would sit on like cross legs, and I used to just sit and like say like just sit as a kid, like just sit chilling, saying or like I would just yes." As a kid, I was quite chilled. Well, I was chilled, but then I was also quite active at the same time. I've done a lot of sports, um, football and gymnastics and things. But there was moments of yeah,
Um,
yoga and just play it like because me and my sister grew up together, we'd play together and even just playing with bubbles. I think is quite a nice slowing down activity because everyone, even no matter what age you're, you just look at them and it's like something that's bringing you into the moment. Just it's like an awe almost as soon as anyone sees bubbles. Oh, like at least I love bubbles as a kid as well.
Lovely
Yeah, wee pockets.
examples, yeah. Could you see those like street performers with big huge bubbles as well, and people are just all
Yeah,
slowly watching them.
yeah,
Lovely, yeah. And you mentioned awe there. I find awe so interesting. It's something I've always known about, but it feels like there's more and more research and evidence to why we need awe in our life, and that like that sense of like wonder about the world and that feeling of whether
yeah.
that's in nature, where we see something like a sunset or a sunrise or something that gives
Hmm.
us that like wonder of the world feeling. I think that's so
Yeah.
special, and maybe sometimes hard to pause and feel that and see that. And so bubbles is like a kind of micro awe that we could
Yeah.
yeah, that's so lovely. Is there anyone who
So,
has been influential in your journey to that you would want to share? Anyone that you mentioned it before we started some podcasts that you listen to, but is there anyone that you would share for someone else to hear?
um, not yoga related, but I don't know if you've heard of Kalechi Okafor before.
Mm-mm,
She's from London.
mhm.
But I discovered her podcast in I think it's back in 2020 called Say Your Mind. I don't think she does. She's doing podcasting at the moment, but she's got lots of episodes. But through just listening to her podcast, I realised that well, it's obviously called Say Your Mind, but before listening to it, I'd always think like similar to the judgment that you were saying. I was quite like being self-critical or like having an inner critic about what I do something or say something and it like offend someone or not even offend someone, but it's like if they have a completely different point of view and that kind of thing. So from listening to our podcast, it kind of made me think like, oh, it's fine to just like say what you think without having to worry about the other person because a lot of people love her podcast and she's recently released a children's book as well. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of who I'd say is quite inspiring, being able to say what you're thinking and just speak for things that you think is important or that you believe in or things you just want to share with other people.
Lovely.
Um,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'd say her.
Can you mention her name again? Because I don't feel like I fully
It's
caught it.
it's Kalechi and then her surname's Okafor. I'm
Okafor.
not sure how to spell her surname, but I'm sure you would find her online. I think it's okay. A-F-O-R, I think, when we first surname.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great way to end. We've got some nice things. We've shared